Hello everyone, this video is about Chapter 34, Lesson 2, Glands of the Endocrine System. These are found in pages 982 to 987 of your textbook. Our objectives. We are going to identify the functions of the major endocrine glands and explain how endocrine glands are controlled. Endocrine glands are scattered throughout the body, many of them with no apparent connection to each other. So how does the body control and regulate so many separate organs so that they act together as a single system? Let us now discuss the human endocrine glands for us to answer that question. So what are the human endocrine glands and their functions? The pituitary gland secretes hormones that directly regulate many body functions or control the actions of other endocrine glands. The hypothalamus controls the secretions of the pituitary gland, while the adrenal glands release hormones that help the body prepare for and deal with stress. The human endocrine system regulates a wide variety of activities. Insulin and glucagon produced by the pancreas help to keep the blood glucose level stable. The thyroid gland has a major role in regulating the body's metabolism. The gonads serve two important functions: the production of gametes and the secretion of sex cells or sex hormones. So the major glands of the endocrine system include the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, the adrenal glands, the pancreas, thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, and reproductive glands. So let's further describe the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is a bean-sized structure that dangles on the slender stalk of tissue at the base of the brain. The gland is divided into two parts, the anterior and posterior pituitary. Some of the hormones released by the pituitary control other glands, while others affect other types of tissue. So you can see from the figure the location and the types or the two parts of the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus, which is attached to the posterior pituitary, is the link between the central nervous system and the endocrine system. The hypothalamus controls the secretion of the pituitary gland. So the activities of the hypothalamus are influenced by hormone levels and other substances in the blood and by sensory information collected by the nervous system. The hypothalamus also contains the cell bodies of the neurosecretory cells whose axons extend to or into the posterior pituitary. Hormones are made in the cell bodies of the hypothalamus and stored in the axons entering the pituitary or posterior pituitary. When the cell bodies are stimulated, the axons in the posterior pituitary release the hormones into the blood. The hypothalamus has indirect control of the anterior pituitary, unlike of that of the posterior pituitary gland. The hypothalamus produces a specific releasing hormone that controls the secretion of each anterior pituitary hormone. So hormones released by the anterior pituitary gland are listed in the table and their specific actions. So the specific hormones are the follicle stimulating hormone or FSH, luteinizing hormone, which is the LH, thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH, adrenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH, growth hormone, prolactin, melanocyte stimulating hormone or MSH, and their specific actions. You will find them in the second column. The adrenal glands are pyramid-shaped structures that sit on top of the kidneys As you can see on the figure, you have the kidney on the left side of the diagram, and on top of it you have the adrenal gland, and it is being enlarged, and that is found in the right side image. The adrenal glands release hormones that help the body prepare for and deal with stress. The outer portion of the adrenal gland is called the adrenal cortex, and the inner part are the adrenal medulla. The adrenal cortex produces more than two dozen steroid hormones called the corticosteroids. The heart-pounding, anxious feeling you get when excited or frightened, commonly known as fight or flight response, is produced when impulses from the sympathetic nervous system stimulate the adrenal medulla to release large amounts of epinephrine or adrenaline and norepinephrine. Epinephrine and norepinephrine increase heart rate and blood pressure. They also cause air passageways to widen, allowing for an increase in oxygen intake and stimulate the release of extra glucose. These are actually the ones which are injected into patients which are brought into the emergency room in hospitals, so that the heart rate will increase and the blood pressure as well. The pancreas has both exocrine and endocrine functions. As an exocrine function or as an exocrine gland, the pancreas releases enzymes that help digest food, while the hormone-producing portion of the pancreas consists of cluster cells called the islets of Langerhans, after their discoverer German anatomist Paul Langerhans. The group of light-colored cells is an islet of Langerhans, as you can see from the figure below. Each islet includes beta cells, which secrete insulin, and alpha cells, which secrete also glucagon. Insulin and glucagon help to keep the blood glucose level stable, as shown in the feedback loop at the bottom. You can see there how glucagon and insulin reacts as food is being taken, and between meals as well when the blood sugar glucose drops. How is blood glucose regulated? When blood glucose levels rise after a person eats, the pancreas releases insulin. Then the insulin stimulates the cells to take glucose out of the blood, preventing blood glucose levels from rising too rapidly and ensuring that glucose is stored for future use. Insulin signals the liver and skeletal muscles to store glucose as glycogen rather. In fat tissue, glucose is converted to lipids. So let us take a look at this figure. When the level of glucose or blood glucose drops, the glucagon is released. When the glucagon stimulates the liver, skeletal muscle, and fat cells to release glucose into the blood, helping raise the blood glucose level back to normal. When the body fails to produce or properly respond to insulin, the condition known as diabetes mellitus occurs. The very high blood glucose levels that result from diabetes can damage almost every system and cell in the body. Now, what is diabetes mellitus? Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder that usually develops before the age of 15. The immune system attacks beta cells, resulting in little or secretion of insulin. People with type 1 diabetes must follow a strict diet and get daily doses of insulin to keep their body or blood glucose level in control. The type 2 diabetes most commonly develops after the age of 40. People with type 2 diabetes produce low to normal amounts of insulin, but their cells do not properly respond to the hormone because the interaction of insulin receptors and insulin is insufficient or inefficient. So let us now have the thyroid and parathyroid glands. The thyroid gland is located at the base of the neck and wraps around the upper part of the trachea. The thyroid gland produces the hormone thyroxine, which increases the metabolic rate of cells throughout the body, causing cells to become more active, use more energy, and produce more heat. Iodine is actually needed to produce a thyroxine. So low levels of thyroxine in iodine-deficient infants produce a condition called cretinism, in which neither the skeletal system nor the nervous system develops properly. So iron deficiency usually can be prevented by the addition of small amounts of iodine to table salt or other food items. Hyperthyroidism results in nervousness, elevated body temperature, increased blood pressure, and weight loss. If thyroid produces too much thyroxine, then this condition called hypothyroidism occurs. Too little thyroxine causes a condition called hypothyroidism, in which low blood or low body temperature, lack of energy, and weight gain are signs of these conditions. A goiter is an enlargement of the thyroid that can be also a sign of hypothyroidism. The thyroid or also produces rather a calcitonin or produces calcitonin, which is a hormone that reduces blood calcium levels. Calcitonin signals the kidneys to reabsorb less calcium from filtrate, inhibits calcium's absorption in the small intestine, and promotes calcium's absorption into bones. Calcitonin's opposing hormone is parathyroid hormone, which is released by the four parathyroid glands located on the back surface of the thyroid. The parathyroid hormone or PTH increases the calcium levels in the blood by promoting the release of calcium from body or from the bone rather, the reabsorption of calcium in the kidneys and the uptake of calcium from the digestive system. The gonads, ovaries, and testes are the body's reproductive glands. In females, we have the ovaries, which produce eggs and secrete a group of hormones called estrogens. In males, the testes produce sperm and secrete the hormone testosterone. The gonads serve two important functions, the production of gametes and the secretion of sex hormones. Now, how are endocrine glands controlled? Like most systems of the body, the endocrine system is regulated by feedback mechanism that function to maintain homeostasis. An example of it is how body maintain water balance. The hypothalamus contains cells that are sensitive to concentration of water in the blood or in the blood. As you lose water, the concentration of dissolved materials in your blood rises. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland to release a hormone, antidiuretic hormone or ADH. This ADH is carried by the blood to the kidneys where it slows the removal of water from the blood. So later on, you will experience a sensation of thirst when you take or of course, when you take a drink, most of that water is quickly absorbed into the blood. When the water content of the blood rises, the pituitary releases less ADH, and this less ADH causes the kidney to remove water from the blood. The blood is then restored to its proper concentration. A water deficit stimulates the release of ADH, causing the kidneys to conserve water. An excess of water causes the kidneys to eliminate the excess water as a component of urine. Now, how does our body control metabolism? The activity of the thyroid gland is controlled by the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland. When the hypothalamus senses the thyroxine levels are low, it secretes thyrotropin-releasing hormone, which stimulates an anterior pituitary to secrete a thyroid-stimulating hormones, or TSH. This feedback loop keeps the level of thyroxine in the blood relatively constant. So this TSH stimulates the release of thyroxine with the thyroid gland, which inhibits the secretion of TRH and TSH and stops the release of additional thyroxine. When the core body temperature begins to drop, the hypothalamus produces extra TRH, and the hypothalamus is also sensitive to temperature. The release of TRH stimulates the release of TSH by the anterior pituitary, which stimulates the release of additional thyroxine by the thyroid. The thyroxine increases oxygen consumption and cellular metabolism. The increase in metabolic activity helps the body maintain its core temperature. So let us now sum up the lesson. Of course, in the human endocrine glands, the endocrine glands are scattered throughout the body. The pituitary gland is a bean-sized structure at the base of the brain, consisting of two parts, the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. It secretes hormones that regulate body functions and control the actions of other endocrine glands. The hypothalamus controls the secretions of the pituitary gland and is the link between the central nervous system and the endocrine system. The hypothalamus controls the posterior pituitary through neurosecretory cells. The hypothalamus produces releasing hormones that control the secretions of the anterior pituitary. The adrenal glands sits on top of each kidney. The adrenal glands make hormones that help the body prepare for and deal with stress. They consist of a cortex and a medulla. The adrenal cortex produces more than 2 dozen corticosteroids, which help maintain homeostasis. The adrenal medulla produces the fight or flight hormones epinephrine and norepinephrine, which help the body respond to stress. The pancreas is both an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland. As an exocrine gland, the pancreas releases digestive enzymes. Insulin and glucagon hormones produced by the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas help keep levels of glucose in the blood stable. The thyroid gland wraps around the trachea at the base of the neck. The four parathyroid glands are on the back surface of the thyroid gland. Thyroxine produced by the thyroid gland regulates metabolism. A hormone from the thyroid gland, calcitonin, and one of the parathyroid glands, parathyroid hormone, work together to maintain blood calcium levels. When the reproductive glands or gonads make gametes and secrete sex hormones, the female gonad's ovaries produce eggs, while the male gonad's testes produce sperm. Control of the endocrine system. Feedback mechanisms involving hormones help maintain homeostasis. In feedback inhibition, increasing levels of a substance inhibit the process that produces the substance. Secretions of the hypothalamus and pituitary gland regulate the activity of other endocrine glands in this way. Actions of the hypothalamus and posterior pituitary gland regulate water balance. The hypothalamus signals the posterior pituitary gland to increase in the case of dehydration or decrease in the case of overhydration. Its release of antidiuretic or diuretic hormone or ADH. In response to ADH levels, the kidneys produce less or more urine. The hypothalamus and anterior pituitary regulate metabolism and body temperature by controlling the amount of thyroxine produced by the thyroid gland. So let us now have some lesson check questions. Number one question. Describe the role of each major endocrine gland. The answer is the pituitary gland regulates many body functions and controls the action of other endocrine glands. The hypothalamus controls the secretions of the pituitary gland. The adrenal glands help the body prepare for and deal with stress. The pancreas regulates blood glucose levels. The thyroid and parathyroid glands regulate blood calcium levels, and the ovaries and testes secrete sex hormones. Our number two question, how is the hypothalamus an important part of both the nervous system and the endocrine system? The hypothalamus serves as the body's link between the nervous system and the endocrine system. Its activities are influenced by substances in the blood and information from the nervous system. Number three and last question. Compare and contrast the two types of diabetes. The answer is both types of diabetes result in problems with regulation of blood glucose levels. In type 1 diabetes, the body's immune system destroys the cells that make insulin, while in type 2 diabetes, the body does not respond efficiently into insulin. So that's all for the glands of the endocrine system. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.